Matt, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask all of our listeners. How many times have you heard this? Or maybe you said it to yourself, because I know I have. Man, my kid cooked it in practice today. My kid looked great in training. My kid is so technical. My kid was confident. And then game day comes and suddenly we start to question it all. Wait. Why are they not getting minutes? Why does it look so good in one environment and so different in another? Can one trainer see progress, one club or one coach see something else? And then, we just sit on the side as parents, completely confused.
That sounds about right. That is the hard part for parents. We want benchmarks. By 11, should they be able to do this? By 13, should they understand that? By 15, is it too late to fix certain habits? But soccer is not that clean, nor is development. A good practice does not always translate to game time. A good highlight does not always mean the player understands the game. And confidence is not just looking good when everything is comfortable.
So I'm not going to put you on the spot this time with the tough questions. I brought somebody special, Christian Silva. And wow, get ready for this. Former professional player, the founder of Silva Academy, well-known in Florida, coach, trainer, someone who has seen the game from every angle. This episode is about what technical, that word you always throw that none of us know what it means, actually means, and what parents should look for beyond the wow moment, and why environment actually matters.
So yes, today we were getting technical, but we're also talking about principles. That to me was the most fascinating part of this conversation. But really, what we were talking about is something every soccer parent has felt. How do I know if my kid is actually progressing? I don't use the word developing.
If we got $1 for every time we use that word on this podcast, you know the gist. Anyway, this is Chasing the Game, getting technical on you all.
Before the clips, before all that, I just want to go straight at it. What is the development gap that we're not honest about? What is it that we're not understanding about our kids?
Jumping right into it, man. I think boil down to one word, man: perception, perceiving the game. I think as you really look at it, the American has the work rate. I think has the disposition to be very technical. So they're not shy in getting the tools, right? But I think that's the part what differentiates the American from, anybody in a Spain and England and a France, the ability to perceive the game, which for me is the soft skills. It's not something you can just rep your way out. So I would even go as far to say, you look at some of these countries, less tools at their disposal, much more efficient and understanding how to play to their strengths, how to mask their weaknesses. And again, it all boils down to perception, understanding the game and what it needs versus I worked on this, I need to somehow pull it out in the game.
So we say the American player, or like, what's the prototypical American player? And we've heard numerous different ways to try to characterize, given this country is a melting pot, is very different in Southern California than it is in Northern California. Very different it is in South Florida as opposed to North Florida. Then you have New York City, which is kind of a lot of everything.
Yeah.
Like, what's getting lost in translation from that point of view?
I mean, then I'd go into our system, really. When you talk about California, right, comes to mind right away, that culture. I mean, I think some of those hotbeds are the last remaining ones where you'll see a pickup culture, a street culture. You don't see that all around. So I think some of those still do salvage that culture of being immersed in the game. But then I think all of them do end up hitting a wall. They hit that ceiling where they need more. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be coaxed. It needs to be taken care of with a vision. There's no incentive to really, develop a player. I think that word gets thrown around, and I think it ends up just being chalked up as a lot of work. But developing a player looks, you know what I mean? It looks they're in the gym, they're this, it's like, right, but that's not developing. Developing can look like sitting a player down and saying, look, these are your characteristics. Long term, what is it going to translate to? This is how you can play the game. When you look at a club outside of America with an open system, there's a lot more incentive. Hey, you may not help me win a game today, but I can't discard you because guess what? That could be $250,000 right there for someone else. Right? You see some youth international tournaments. The American player, right, is not far off the level, But then you talk about a gulf of experience once they go and they're bumping heads with professionals. Where here we're still a little bit on the age group thing, and just really trying to pour all of those resources into that, right? And kind of last point I'll add to it, I'm aware of some of these top academies coming to GA Cup, right? They're playing players a year up. Barcelona's bringing their U17s. Yeah, but they have a U17 player playing the Champions League, Lamine Yamal. So it's like, are they really bringing their top U17s? They're just coming for a development piece.
So a little bit about your past. You came through the U.S. youth system, experience abroad in the professional game as well. What was the moment where you realized, okay, I'm good enough to contribute in the United States outside of just playing soccer?
Twofold. There's a midway point in my career when I was playing in Germany. I was in a trial match against Hamburg, and the coach pulls me aside and is just like, stop moving. And I was like, oh, he probably means maybe move differently. No, he's like, no, stop moving, stand still. And he was like, you're blocking so many passing lanes. You're so desperate to show us every single play that you're missing 3, 4, 5 plays ahead of time when you can just receive the ball facing forward if you leave that passing lane open. You're thinking for you, you're not thinking for the team or the situation. And that was just like, whoa. It was like a weird month where I was like, this is not only is it not being taught, it's not even spoken about in America. I was just taught work hard, run hard, and you'll make it, right? But I think that was a point throughout my career that as a player, it opened up my eyes to like, wow, I was a center midfielder, right? So it's like, you have to be attuned and aware to everybody else's role. But then big picture, I was like, wow, no one's being taught off the ball, thinking a few plays ahead. No one's perceiving the game or even being coached to perceive the game. It's just me, and I've got to stand out, almost as if it's like a tennis or some sort of individual sport. So I think as my career kept going, ended up playing under some amazing coaches. I think for me, I attribute a lot of the latter part of my career. My knowledge came a lot from playing under Mark Lowry, who's now at Monarchs in Real Salt Lake. And I came to him, I want to say 2-3 years before I retired, but it was almost like relearning the game and kind of saying, oh, wow, this is kind of what I learned in Europe playing abroad. So I think that latter part of my career was like, hey, once I'm done, like I'm eager to get this message out, because I think that if you add that to a player with work rate, a player with work ethic, that's the American player, I mean, the possibilities really are endless. So that's kind of what inspired what I'm doing now from a technical development standpoint and now the team standpoint.
No, I was going to say, so you were talking mostly game understanding tactics, right?
I would say principles.
Okay.
Because there are certain principles that are just ingrained in these players that they can apply anywhere, because it's a skill set that players can take, almost like a framework to perceive. And if you have that, then it's like, okay, now I have a framework, a blueprint. Now I can pick and choose what tools apply with the situation.
That's great. So to the technical piece of this, when you say a player is technical, what do you actually mean? Because parents hear that word constantly. We say that word constantly, right? But it can mean 5 different things depending on who's running the session, who the coach is, what environment they're in, what the parent knows, what the parent doesn't know. So what does it mean to you?
This is an award-winning question, Matt. I'm telling you right now.
To me, and you think about technique and skill, right? I think it operates on a pendulum. I think technique is the disposition to be skillful, right? It's the foundation of being able to execute a lot of the actions you'll need in a large amount of parts of the game. But again, when you talk about a pendulum, right, it's the disposition to be. And then as you start getting towards skill, right, it's executing those techniques based on situations, based on variables. But then to answer your question, as that pendulum swings more on the skill side, you get what I think gets a little bit misinterpreted, which is tricks. Skills are tricks, right? But it's like you can watch a player stand out. I mean, just receiving in pockets on both feet. And you're like, wow, that guy's technical. I mean, he's receiving based off of all the variables thrown at him, tight enough to turn, gathering enough information. His first touch isn't slowing down his thought process because he has enough. You got what I mean? He's bought a second or two because his touch was so clean. So I do think it's that foundational ability, right, to do what the game requires, and the disposition to be skillful. For me, like I said, I can speak for my experience. I think a lot of it requires context, and I think a lot of it requires, and I think something that would benefit the parent is looking at the intent, because the actual skill, I'm notorious for saying in my environment, like, I've had some amazingly technical players come through my program, and I've told them straight up, I'm like, I'm not super impressed with technique, because technique for the sake of technique is just a matter of reps. It's the recognition of when to do the technique. So I always say the skill isn't the skill, it's the recognition of when to do the skill that really for me stands out, right? Because again, zooming out and looking at hard skills, I mean, kids can dribble the life out of cones these days, right? But if it doesn't translate, what are we actually doing? So as far as for parents, it's looking at the intent, right? Because there's a lot of variables. If you're moving up from a lower level team to a higher level team, are they still able to get to that point to try and do, like, have the intent to do that skill or that play, right? And if they're not, what are the factors that's missing? And I think ultimately, that's what a supplemental trainer should be able to help bridge that gap, right? Break it down like, hey, look, you're able to take those guys on. Your dribbling ability hasn't dropped. The problem is it takes you 3 seconds to get a hold of the ball. And at this level, you only have 1.5 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's like, so what does that mean, right? It's like the first touch got to get cleaner, the recognition, the dismarking. So do you see how there's variables that go? It's like the skill's not actually messing up. You're just not able to get there because some technical foundation things are missing.
So you mentioned the supplemental training piece. I'm assuming you cannot do that in a 1v1 type of situation. That has to be group training. Because otherwise... and to answer your question, you can, but now we're kind of diving into why I kind of did the route that I did, right? I think supplemental training, it has to have synergy to your environment. Because if not, it's just theory, but no application. So, I mean, and let's keep it very generic, right? If you're working on a kid's ability to receive and combine and 1-2s because he wants to play like Xavi, but his team plays like 1950s Preston North End, right? It's like, you're going to maybe get to see that 2 times on the weekend, and you're not going to really get a good gauge of if it's working or if it's not working. So do you see there's a lot? Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Let's almost double down on what you just said, theory and no application. I'm guilty of that too, but I've become much better at it now, but I just see it all around me. And it's parents sharing short social media clips with their kids of professional players doing certain things or other kids their age doing certain things. What is really the value of that?
I think you're spot on there, I'll be honest. And I'll tell you why. Let's use an example, right? Let's say a dribbler. I think a part that goes missed is, in order to be that guy, that dribbler, right? There's an element of technique, but then there's also an element of the child's temperament. And it's unfair to the child who maybe doesn't have that personality to want to stand out, to grab the game by the throat, to be, hey, I'm going to put, and that's just temperament. That's not, you can influence it, but it's like, you've got to know your kid as well, because you're going to put a very unnecessary strain on that player of like, hey, I'm kind of just a chill guy. I like getting others involved, but now I'm being told, take these guys on and be, this dog on the field. It's not going to translate. And if it does, it's almost forced, right? So I don't think there's a whole lot of value in it. I do think, stumbling on those, it's inspirational, but to just think you can like upload your child to be what you've seen online, it's really unfair to a child. You know what I mean? I'm not going to try and turn you into a Neymar. Have you seen a pro player who passes the way you'd want to pass? Cool, let's go that route. Because if there's no input from the player, like that, they're going to fail at being someone else always.
I definitely agree with you. And I've learned this almost the hard way. I think what's lacking is that these videos don't have a story to them. Because I remember me when I was young and I wanted to play, it was about the story of the player I loved. It could have been a championship game It could have been a moment. And that was what the inspiration was. I think when these short videos are starting to circulate, they feel soulless. And us expecting that our kids are going to be inspired by something that it really doesn't have that kind of context to it.
I think you said it perfectly. It's lacking context, right? Let's see what happened 10 seconds before or 10 seconds after. That may tell a different story, right?
Christian,
Right.
I'm still somewhat stuck on the principal comment that you made. Stuck because I think it's really meaningful. Is it possible to coach or to coach principles like that in a team environment where there's 21 or 22 kids?
I do think it's very possible. I'll give you an example. Let's use a simple principle. In Spanish, they say, juntar para girar. Basically, get together to find the turn, meaning populate players together to connect a few passes to then find the outlet. So in a way, you're teaching to attract to then play a weak side. And it's a Spanish concept, right? But I think it's very possible to teach with very simple tools. I mean, you can take a simple 5v2 and teach that concept. How are we finding the free man? If we can't find the free man, can we connect a few extra passes to pull them out and then create the free man? Right? So these are all principles that you can teach and layer on over and over and over a prolonged period of time, that they just become principles and habits. Understand when to take 2 touches, when to take 1 touch. And I tell you from experience, kids can learn that very easily. The thing is, there needs to be clarity in what you're teaching and why you're teaching it. Because I think, like I said, you take the American player, they want to learn. They're like sponges. You know what I mean? And you're, oh no, we're not going to win on the weekend because we're focused too much on principles. It's like, look, they're kids. The tactics you're doing only apply to your team in this specific game. So they're not going to be able to take that and run with it. But if you teach them principles, you're going to benefit from them in games right away. But also you're equipping the player to move on and do something special with it. So on my program, I can speak on that because obviously I'm in charge of the technical development, the curriculum, the microcycles of what we're working on. And then I'm in charge of the game. So it's about setting like KPIs and you know, the way you analyze your game a little bit more methodically, right? It's like, hey, look, how many times did my center back break lines? Did they carry the ball into, you know what I mean? Did they recognize the block dropped and they could go attract someone out? As a coach, it boils down to that as well. I think any environment, if your player is doing supplemental training, you now the parent, and maybe even with the help of that coach, that trainer, have to set certain guidelines for what you're going to judge the game on, right? If you're working on 1v1s, right? You've got to have an idea like, okay, I had X amount of 1v1s, X amount went well, X didn't go well, Y, dissect it. But there's a little asterisk there because if there's no synergy with the actual team or the coach or the club, all of a sudden you're almost hijacking that environment strictly for yourself, right? So there has to be the solution. I mean, I'm leaving it open-ended, but I think there has to be a little bit of communication or a little bit of something there to really say, hey, look, I can't be a center back working on all my 1v1 skills and try and pull them out in the 18-yard box, right? It's like, you've also got to learn that you're within the context of a team. But again, to answer your question, I think it all boils down to how you're then analyzing the game back. Are you seeing the things you worked on?
Maybe we can simplify it even further.
Yeah, absolutely.
If let's just try it by ages, let's say. So you have an 11-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old. Does it break down where, forget the Rockets, those magic players who can do everything. Let's talk about the regular kid. Are there benchmarks that you think are important at certain ages that parents should look for? Where you go, okay, by the age 11, it's like math. This is where you need to be. By 13, this is where you need to be.
That's probably the route to go, right? I think the more you're able to simplify it, that's where you can take action at a very, very youth elementary level. The ability to carry the ball, the ability to receive the ball on both feet, and then the ability, or at least the intent, to try and take a guy on. I think for a parent, in the easiest way is try and look at the amount of unforced errors. So no pressure, ball going over their foot. No pressure, ball going under their foot. Minimal pressure or a solid, comfortable, subjectively, right? A comfortable amount of time tripping over the ball, right? So those things are ones that stand out right away. Hey, that needs to be cleaned up. yes, you can want to do X, Y, and Z at a higher level, but the foundation needs to be strong.
There should be benchmarks, right? In a way,
Absolutely.
If you're, we heard that from Jose Campos, and I know this is the extreme because he's training a high-end academy, but he said, if you don't have certain skills by a certain age, we can't give those to you. It's not that it's too late. Of course, you can pick it up later, or you'll never be great at that skill. But if you don't have it by a certain age, certain amount of skills that fit that age group, you got to do a lot of catching up.
I think every club that operates at that level, every program does have, like, I have it for my program, where as far as like at this age, you need to learn X, Y, and Z, and then progress to then add, a much more difficult version of that technique. Do you get what I mean? Like that synergy, that curriculum has to be progressive, because if not, you're just throwing darts blindly. But again, I 100% agree with Jose Campos there, where is it possible? Yes, but you may look fantastic, but there's too many holes in that foundation that at a high level, a high intense environment, you're going to get found out. You know what I mean? You may be the best dribbler, but if you can't receive the ball well, there's nothing I can do for you there. You're not going to get to do what you do well because you're missing, there's gaps in your foundation.
Christian, at this stage, because you've been running, how long have you been running Silva Academy now?
Silva Academy since 2011, unofficially. I got a lot more serious the last 2 years of my playing career, 2017, and then I retired end of 2019 and just went in head first.
Wow. So, okay. So you've seen a lot. I mean, are you at this stage, are there kids who are working? Is it truly supplemental? I mean, are there kids who are working with you and they continue to play with their club? So in the supplemental sense, or you have kids who are opting to just work with you and then you're finding matches for them? And if so, what's driving? By the way, we see that here in the New York area quite a bit. And I guess we've seen different reasons for why kids opt out. And I'm curious what you're seeing in Florida.
A little of both. I started solely off of technical development, have a big passion for it. I think for me, the only reason why I went into the full-time route was kind of what we talked about here today. Was I kind of started seeing we'd have to keep going over the same principles. It's like, and so I started kind of digging. I'm like, oh, your environment it's not complementing what you're working on. Like, you're trying to do something hopefully high level, and your environment's just like, hey, let's get the ball and go. So that was the first, for me, kind of like aha moment, was I don't really want to put on too much on my plate and start this team route, but for the sake of working, if I want to do something, I want to do a good job at it. And if I'm working with a set of players, if it's all theory and no application, you're just kind of like, you're working mindlessly. And for me, I'm like, no, like, I want you, the parent, I want you guys to see the work come to life. So we started as a 3v3 team one summer. And that was for me like oh, wow. If you're able to create an environment, a platform where they can apply what they're working on, you encourage them to do it, but you also create a culture of standards. I mean, the kids thrive. So that was the motivator for doing it. Was like, hey, look, if we're going to work, we need to apply, and you need to kind of go through that process as well, because if you can't perceive in the game situations to do said techniques, they're just, you're going to be able to beat Cone FC every week, right? But you're not really going to do anything in a game. You know what I mean? So I think that's the part where it's like, and for me, that was always the thing, was like, I want to make sure if I'm busting my tail, and I'm super passionate about what I do, right?
I can tell.
If I'm going to bust my tail and push you, where's the reward? The reward shouldn't be like, wow, I can do it, as if it's a one-off trick. It's like, coach, like, I feel like I'm playing better. I'm doing so much more than what I was beforehand.
So in now that you do have kids that, for the longer duration, obviously you got to deal with parents as well. I mean, it's the whole ecosystem of it all. And part of it, we talk about this on the pod to nauseam, is this idea of culture in the United States for soccer versus it is in other countries. So parents want to see good things, right? In their mind, we love to see that wow moment from our kid. Right. How many times I hear parents yell shoot at inappropriate times or things like that. So how do you educate the parents too, that part of the decision making is doing stuff without the ball, or part of the decision making is releasing at a certain time, or is it, I mean, it's such a delicate balance, especially considering what you're trying to accomplish.
We try. It's definitely something I've tried to do. I do think, with no disrespect, it is an uphill battle. And I get it, right? You're there watching your kid, the emotions are flying. You want to see them do great things. But to your point, the shoot it example is perfect. I mean, there's times we cross half field and I'm hearing, shoot it. Like, first of all, the kids can't kick that far. Like, second of all, like, we worked all week on comfort in the attacking third, on the ability to create a 1v1, to create a 2v1. And again, kids are very literal and they're going to respect their parents. They're not going to turn around as kids and say, hey, I mean, right? So it just hijacks what they're thinking. So it goes back to what I said. They're not able to perceive anymore because they're going, oh, wait, someone said shoot it. I've got to shoot it. If not, I'll get screen down. So I do think parent education is massively important. But then again, I do think, and I think parents are not at fault for it. I don't think clubs are at fault for it. I'll go as far as say, but I think in a system where you're going to pay, you're gonna demand and want results, or you're gonna demand and want certain things from the game. So the culture is tricky, right? Because I think, you know, I'm a little bit old school in that sense, right? It's like you want the player to earn it. You want them to kind of go through that adversity to really train them to go, I'm trying to show coach how good I am. He's asking me for X, Y, and Z to complement how good I am, right? But if I'm only worried about the me and I'm not doing the bigger picture, how are we going to grow? You know what I mean? So I think that's the part where the culture is important. I'm doing it now, right? As a trainer, you're everybody's best friend. Everybody goes to you to tell you to vent their gossip about their coach. But once you switch over to that coaching role, you're either best friend or worst enemy immediately. And there's no gray area there. But I mean, to answer your question, I do think the parents knowing a little bit more of what's going on, it would help the player tremendously, because then, you know, that message is getting reinforced.
Listen, we all know this is a massive business, and it's not just, I always try to make a point of this. It's not just youth soccer in this country. It's every youth sport, right? Like, soccer is not by itself. It's just different than the rest of the world. And that's what makes it somewhat unique. How it feels like there's a lot of tension in the system between clubs, between trainers, between, you know, defining the word elite and academy, all the different leagues. There's just a million different things going on. From the lens in which you look at it, which is a pretty unique one and that you're seeing a lot, 5 years from now, like, what does this environment look like? Is this going to clean up a little bit? Are we going to see the cream rise to the top? Or because there's so much money in it, we're going to see this market that is youth soccer in this country continue to be kind of bogged down by what seems like tension as opposed to what's most important, which is players and development?
I think it's reaching a breaking point, at least from what I'm seeing. It's getting more and more expensive, more and more exclusive, which I don't think does the game a lot of good. And I'd even go as far to say, I personally don't think pay to play is the enemy. And I'll elaborate on that. Why? Because at the end of the day, in a system that allows businesses to pop up, it's not the business fault, right? They're just putting out a product and putting a price. There's no, granted, yes, there's the exclusivity of certain avenues, certain pathways, right? But I do think the system being a little more open would help. It would help tremendously, because then there's different stories, right? There could be a local, very humble club, you know, that maybe all the business owners in the area want to see kids thrive. So they're putting resources in. So then there may be a little bit more, let's say, selective, a little bit more adamant about, hey, look, we're not going to have a lot of resources. You know, we really got to try and perform with what we have and develop what we have, right? Versus some others, hey, maybe they have the means to do it. There's nothing wrong with that, but they can coexist, right? And then that's where you'll see that blend of cultures. The cream really will have a chance to rise to the top. But
when you say open up, you're talking about promotion, relegation,
On all
I'm
levels.
assuming,
On all levels.
and all levels,
Even
with
with
the ability, if you invest in a player, to potentially sell that player,
right,
or receive some sort of compensation, however, whatever that looks like.
Any incentive to develop changes, for me, the whole landscape.
Yeah.
Like you go as far, and I think it was 2012 when Eric Winalda had a team have that run in the Open Cup. I mean, they went on to beat 2 MLS teams, and it was 17, 18-year-olds. So you think about it from this point of view, like all of a sudden you remove the gatekeepers. You can't tell me I'm good or not good enough. I just proved it. Do you get what I mean?
Then you had MLS teams pulling out of the U.S. Open Cup because they were afraid to get beaten again.
Right.
Because again, what did they have to gain? It's
bad for business, right?
It's bad. Yeah.
It's a lose-lose in a way. You either you don't get a lot from playing a lower level opponent, or they show well, and then all of a sudden your bosses are calling you saying, "Hey, why are you getting this result?" But even on the lower level, right? You know that same exclusivity exists on smaller programs. Like the some of these programs are not really open to playing teams from lower divisions or different divisions because, you know, for personal reasons, and it ends up being they don't want to lose players. So again, it all boils down to it's almost the antithesis of competition. You know, I played in Argentina for a few years. Actually lived with the uncle of Alexis McAllister, and notorious for really competitive football, Argentina. And I always say, like, Boca Juniors players, or as a club, Boca Juniors doesn't like our River Plate, but they respect them as competitors. They're not trying to get River Plate eliminated from the league or terminate their program because a player went from one to another, right? So I do think that competition will help everything grow in a healthy way. Like, you want to see those rivalries, obviously within reason and within respect, but you need that here, you know, because that's where players get up for games. That's where coaches hey, I got to do a good job. But in the spirit of competition, not just in the spirit of, you know, trying to be in this exclusive pathway that no one else can get into.
As Matt was saying, it's like weeds. There's so many things growing all around the clubs that it's really hard for a parent to almost know what is it that your kid actually needs. Like what would be like, you don't even know what a supplemental program to sign your kid up to because you have no metrics of success.
Right.
Where just parents are sending kids to every program that pops up, the program of the month, to try to get their kid progressing in a certain way, but we really have no idea what to do.
I think you made a great point there. I do think part of it for me, like what comes to mind is part of it's kind of the beauty of the sport, though. As far as like, there are many ways to play this game. There's many ways to develop in this game. I think a part of it where it can get tricky, right, is that can be used against the parent who maybe isn't as educated, doesn't know what to look for. So they're not seeing, but let me rephrase it. They're seeing a little bit of the buffet. And then that's what I call the buffet sessions, right? You know, hard work, a lot of screaming, but it's like, okay, we did 5 minutes of juggling, 10 minutes of ladders, 10 minutes of ball mastery, 10 minutes of shooting. And when I get parents speaking to me on this, I'm like, right, zoom out. You just did 10 minutes of one thing and you see them once a week. So think about it differently. If you would go work on your shooting 10 minutes a week, are you doing a lot? You're probably not. So it's like, what are you actually getting there? That's what I call the buffet session, is like, if you're going to sprinkle in a little bit of everything, you're not really doing anything. You're just working hard, right? So I think for the parent, to your point, the pragmatic approach is the best one. Look at very foundational things first. Because if my kid isn't receiving the ball well, I can't worry about their ability to score X amount of goals or dribble X amount of players. So I think that pragmatic, the simple is the best way with development. Why? Because that's a very attainable lens for a parent who maybe doesn't have a whole lot of time in this game.
How quickly can you tell when it's a player who wants to be there to do the extra work versus the parent who wants the player there to do the extra work?
Without exaggerating, minutes. And it's kind of part of it that it's almost a little heartbreaking.
Yeah.
because you see the passion from the parent, but you're like, this kid just like, you have to, in Spanish, they say you play this game. You don't just train this game. And it kind of boils down to a little bit of what we talked to earlier is like, sometimes the temperament of the player isn't being taken into. They may not care to dribble at all. They may just want to feed through balls and just kind of like be that facilitator because they like sharing, right? And they're kind of doing things that maybe doesn't resonate with them. So it's a tough one, right? Because it's like you want to hold the player accountable, but maybe there's another source holding them accountable for things that they don't want to do. So it's just like, look, the player is just getting it from both ends right now. It's heartbreaking. You know, I do think that's a part where, you know, you really got to know your kid as well. And I do think questions is the best way. Just get to know your own kid. I mean, it sounds very, very simple and redundant. You need to turn the player into what they want to actually be. But in order to get there, you have to learn what their temperament is, what they want to be, what they trend towards. And then from there, now you have something they'll bite, you know what I mean? They'll nibble on, they'll go that route with you because it's something that they want.
I mean, it's part of it, I guess, is also understanding the environments and the options. We're in New York, we have a lot of options around us, but not many areas in the United States have the options for soccer like we do with accessibility. And it's just, Matt brought up this, you know, we're in tryout season and Matt was we were discussing this ludicrous situation sometimes where you see in New York, you'll see 100 kids go try out at a certain club and the coach has, I don't know, 2 sessions to do with them on a quarter of a field. They divide them into groups of 20. It is a circus situation. And you sit there as a parent and you go, how can anyone make any decision here? Have you seen that? Have you experienced that? And what's your take on that?
I have the player in me and always kind of hijacks my thinking with that because I always say, look, do I agree with it? Absolutely not. Let me lay that out. Let's get that right. But at the end of the day, if you're aspiring to play at a much higher level, you've got to be able to go in there and stand out. Do you get what I mean? So, and it's tough, right? It's a tough ask because you're talking about a large scale. And I do think it's not something I agree with. I do think there's a very, very large net being cast. So I do think there are a lot that fall through the cracks of, hey, you know, maybe if you work with this guy, he could turn into this player, but you didn't even give him a look, right? But then, and we're kind of steering this back towards the supplemental part where it's like, right, but for you as a parent, right, there's a lot you can do without those resources, without a certain supplemental trainer. And it is really just being very, very simple. Tick the simplest benchmarks first, because from there, your player has more of a disposition to grow, to stand out and add more to their game. So is it fair? Absolutely not. But you know, I don't want it to be something that parents feel like they're helpless with, because they can still go, hey, look, regardless, there's certain benchmarks we need to hit. And if you're not hitting them, we need to double down on that, whether it's with a trainer or without a trainer, receiving on both feet, being able to dribble. If you can't, like, I'll give you an example. I have players that, let's say we're working on dribbling exercises, right? And they want to go faster. And I'm like, okay, then go faster. Sounds silly, right? But it's like, do what you want to do. Don't be afraid to mess up. Go through that process of messing up. And then there you'll kind of strip off the excess, the fat from it. And you'll get better at it. But the reason I say that is not so much because I'm oversimplifying, but I'm saying the player and the parent need to be able to feel like they're in control to a degree. It can't be like, oh, my player can't dribble. So it's like, if you want to get better at dribbling, dribble. Right? Because again, if you don't have this trainer in your certain immediate area, that doesn't mean you can't play professionally. You know what I mean? So have parents completely, we all know the percentages and the likelihood of becoming a pro. And when I say, we talk about this, we've talked about this now in multiple sessions. These kids, most of them think about being a pro. It's playing in the Prem or playing in La Liga or Serie A or the Bundesliga. And if in their minds, like they failed if they've actually just made it to the MLS.
I'm talking when they're like 12, 13 years old, right? Or maybe even younger. And then as they get older, they realize how hard it is to even play in the MLS. When these families come to you, is it mostly because they want their kids to train and be in an environment where they have a chance to be a professional? Or is it because they want them to excel at something and be committed and have the rigor? Is it because they eventually want to play in college? Like, what does that look like?
In my environment, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You do have ones that it's like, wow, they definitely have a few posters on their wall that they probably pray to every night. But then, there are those that maybe take a bit more of a realistic approach. I see all of them. I do think doing this so long, you can tell right away. But ultimately, I say this, the only person it really affects is the player, because, they've got to be clear with what they want and their kids. So I'm notorious for saying this in my environment. I'm like, you guys all want to be a pro, but you have no idea what that means. Like, you have no idea what you're chasing. You're chasing suffering, stress, loneliness, sacrifice, one high moment that makes it worth it. Stress, sacrifice, stress, loneliness. And I don't mean it in like a morbid way, right? Like, for me, I love the journey I was able to do. I think most professional players will tell you that, but I think on the same token, it's like, I do think they need to be aware, right? They need to be aware of like, hey, it's not work really hard and then your contract from Man U comes in the mail. You may have to go play in second division Bulgaria for a year.
Yeah.
You may have to go to Iceland for a very low contract and get promotion and then work your way up. So I do think that part is it's missing a bit. And again, have lofty goals, right? But you have to also be willing to be all in if you're going to keep pushing. Because I think a lot of what I've seen is a lot of parents really bang on that door. And then when it opens, it's like, oh, wait, like, we have to relocate. Oh, wait, my kid has, and it's like, well, you asked for this. Like, you know what I mean? You asked for loneliness, stress, inconvenience. So, and I think I bring up Justin's episode. Like, I think that's such an impactful episode, because I think it's the part of football that maybe doesn't get factored in when you're chasing it.
Yeah. We had an episode with a career guide as well from England, who talks exactly about that, is that many parents just are not prepared for the journey. And those who are lucky enough to get the contract quickly or at a young age don't really understand that this is just the beginning of a very complex journey. I know I've seen some of your writing and I've been following you for a while, and you use the word confidence a lot. But how do you define confidence in football for younger kids?
For me, the way I really like to portray it to them is confidence is certainty in what you can do. And the reason I word it like that is because I think confidence nowadays gets thrown around very recklessly. Oh, so-and-so didn't play well because they're not confident.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, oh, when they're in my backyard, they do that move really well. And it's like, of course, I'm prime Neymar in my backyard still, and I retired 6 years ago. You get what I mean? So going back to the point, right? You've got to use confidence in a way that equips the player to try and find success. So it's got to be within the controllables. So I'll always ask players, like, are you confident you can score today? And they'll think I'm baiting them for a yes. And they'll go, yes. I was like, no, because what if the goalie has the game of his life too? So it's like, if you can control it, what happens? Game kicks off, 5 minutes in, I'm going to score today. 10 minutes in, haven't scored, but I'm going to score today. Halftime, you haven't scored. Ball's not going in the net. Maybe I'm having a bad game. And then that's when your thoughts get hijacked. But if you flip the script and say, let's say as a forward, I'm going to dismark as best I can. I'm going to wait for eye contact and make those runs into those passing lanes. If I do, I'm going to chase up every rebound, right? If you can base your confidence off of things you can control, you're now not dependent on the outcome. You can just keep working and focus all your energy and intensity on what you can control. Outwardly, what does that look like? Oh my gosh, that kid's flying today. He looks like he's going to score. You hear that about forwards. Because he's doing all the things that he needs to do, and not dependent his energy and his focus and his emotions on, I haven't scored yet.
So good.
You know what I mean? So I think that's such a powerful tool because I think to your point, Liron, like I do think that used incorrectly creates stress, and stress creates cortisol, and cortisol slows you down. So all of a sudden a kid's like, I'm super fit, but I feel like I can't run because my breathing's off because I have to score a hat trick. And it's like, you may not. That's a reality of life, but you can play an exceptional game if you frame it within what you can control.
The controllables, that's massive.
Christian, do you see a big difference between kids who are watching a lot of football and kids who aren't? And are there a lot of kids who are still watching full matches that you know of?
My kids are going to beat me up for saying this, but I think it's a lost art, man. I think it's a lost art. There are very few, and you can tell. It sounds very cliche, but you can tell. Like there's just a natural game sense they get from imitating what they've seen. Little details. I'll give you a very, very simple detail. Losing a game and kids who sprint after the ball to throw it back in versus kids are like, I want to win. Where's the ball? It's like, they're not going to give it to you, man. Like, do you understand the dynamic right now? They're managing the game right now. And obviously it's much deeper than that, right? But I do think now kind of ties into what we were saying, like why the definition of skill has gotten so skewed nowadays. Because now it's the highlight reel, it's the TikToks, it's the flashy plays, but it's like, watch that entire game and see how many times they did that in that game. What was the situation? What was the context? So I do think it's becoming a lost art. I do think as a generation, there's that instant gratification nowadays. And sitting down and watching a game may seem boring for maybe some younger players nowadays. Whereas for us, growing up, it was like, you have to watch a game because you're going to miss the highlight. Where now they get it fed to them, whether they watch the game or not.
Right. And that's the problem. They're watching mostly highlights, right? Nothing to do with the buildup that led to the highlight or the run that opened up the space or back to the principles. Like that's to me, what seems like there's this disconnect between what kids are experiencing and how they actually apply those things, because it's all of it. Right? Like if you don't have all of it, you can't paint the whole picture, or it becomes much more difficult to paint the whole picture.
Matt, I think they're just distracted in a way. We watch games. I can't speak for you guys, but I know the reason I grew up watching games is because I loved a certain team and I loved that team and I would watch those games. And it was something that I loved. And that's how I got to know the game. I was so attached to the league and the players, and it meant so much to me. I think I'm looking at Mikey. Yes, he loves to watch it, but in a way, he's not as emotional about the game or the teams as I was, or the stories behind it. There's just so much for them. Like if you look at what soccer is now, it's nonstop. There's Premier League teams were fighting for relegation. 7 teams were going to make it, fighting to get to Europe. There's still a championship game. There was a Champions League Cup. The World Cup is starting in 6 days. Soccer wasn't like that. There's enormous amount of it. Live games, clips. It's almost hard to blame them. It's just incredibly overwhelming. It's like, where do you even start? And if the narrative is not there to pull you through, then at that point, you're just forcing a kid to sit down and study. If they're going to sit, if you're telling them to do that, of course they're not going to fucking watch it. Sorry, they're not going to watch a game.
No, I think you're spot on. And I think propaganda is a big word there, because I think what I see in my environment is kids aren't a fan of the game. They're a fan of single players.
Yeah.
It's Ronaldo or Messi. And wherever Ronaldo is, we're going to watch that game for Ronaldo. And we're going to watch that game for Yamal. And we're going to watch that game for Messi. But then it's like, it's not even watch the game. They're just going to track it. They're going to wait to see if he scored. So again, and Matt, to your example, that so much context is being missed that, you almost see that game sense kind of waning a little bit, because again, kids are very literal. So now when a coach says X, Y, and Z, they don't have something to pull from, like, oh, this is what it looks like, I'm connecting the dots. It's like, nope, coach said, shoot. It's like, yeah, but you're at half field, man. like we're not there yet. So I do think a lot of that context, it does go missing, because it's a little bit of a lost art to watch games now.
Fantastic. Rapid questions, Matt.
If you could fix only one thing about youth soccer in this country, what would it be?
Oof, I apologize in advance. I don't know if that's a rapid one, but
This is a math rapid. It's trademark.
open it up and allow access. And I'll tell you why. Like in my immediate environment, there's a lot of different demographics. There's a lot of small clubs trying to pop up. They're just doing an honest job and wanting to kind of showcase their interpretation of the game, and they're just not allowed to. Right. Again, that just opens things up. So I think that would be the first and foremost. You can address certain topics, like a pay to play doesn't revolve around a astronomical league fee. Pay to play can be, hey, look, we're completely sponsored. We're completely family run. Like, I think that'd be the best thing, because everybody's interpretation of the game deserves a chance. There's no one right way to do it.
Matt, you see, that worked out great. This was incredibly helpful. Well, let me teach.
Thanks to him, not me.
Well, let me teach you, Matt, how rapid fire really works.
Okay, great.
So, eye rolling training habit at the youth level.
Eye rolling training habit at the youth level. Unthought out ball mastery.
Biggest myth soccer parents believe.
If you work hard, you'll make it.
Underrated technical skill at youth.
Scanning.
Red flags in a young player.
Response to adversity.
One thing a good trainer should be able to explain clearly to a parent.
Why they did their session.
A green flag in a young player.
Response to adversity.
And for the last one, what does a good soccer parent do quietly?
What would a good soccer parent do quietly? Ask more questions.
Man, I got to tell you, Coach, you're amazing.
Appreciate it. No, I'm happy to do it, man. I think, I share the same passion you guys do, even though we're on different vantage points. They're necessary conversations.
Man, can make wow into so many different words and contexts.
There's so many wows. Yeah.
What I really appreciated about Christian is that he kept pulling us away from the easy thing to see. The move, the clip, looking good in practice. He keeps bringing us back to the harder question. Does it translate, and how? He said the skill isn't the skill. It's the recognition of when to do the skill. That is a sentence parents should hold on to, because we can all see the move. We can all see the clean touch, but the game is asking something else. When, where, why, under what pressure?
Yeah, and that is where the episode gets real for us and for parents. Not that it didn't get real before, but this is when, and forget real, it's getting depressing. Because we want to know, is our kid improving, right? We want benchmarks. We want someone to tell us that the work is working, it's worth it. But sometimes we're judging the easiest things to see, right? So not the things that probably matter the most. And Coach Christian talked about the word intent, receiving in both feet, carrying the ball, unforced error, and how quickly a player can get control when the level starts to ramp up. That might give us a better way to watch a game or understand practice. We got to be less emotional. I'm talking about me. Less badge driven. I'm talking about you. More connected to the actual player.
I think, by the way, I think you have that reversed. On the emotional.
I have so many things reversed, Matt.
Yeah. The second big idea was environment. Christian said supplemental training needs synergy to your environment, because without that, it becomes theory, but without application. A trainer can be good, a session can be good, a kid can work hard, but if the player never gets asked to apply those ideas in the game, the development can become completely disconnected. That is when parents get confused. That's when players get confused. The player looks better in training, but the game does not really change.
Yeah, and then you hit with confidence problems, right? And I thought Christian, the way he defined confidence was really amazing, because he said, confidence is certainly in what you can do, not certainty that you will score, or certainty that the coach will pick you, or certainty that everything will go your way. Certainty is about controllables, and I never thought about it like that. So can I scan? Can I make the run? Can I respond after a mistake? Can I keep going when things are not going my way? It's probably a healthier version of confidence for a young player than me telling my son, if you don't save a pen, we're not going home.
And maybe at that point, maybe he didn't want to go home. And maybe the bigger point is that development cannot be defined from one angle, not one clip, not one practice, not one tryout, not one parent on the sideline. Christian said players need to be met at their level in order to grow. That matters because the top badge is not always the right environment. The hardest team is not always the best fit. And looking good in the wrong setting is not the same as actually growing.
Yeah. And he wrapped it up with what does a good soccer parent do quietly? And quietly, you understand the keyword? His answer was simple: ask more questions. That might be the job, right? Ask more questions before we all panic, before we blame the coach, before we chase another trainer, another team, or maybe another shortcut. Ask what is actually translating. Ask what you think your kid understands. Ask what the environment is teaching. And ask whether your kid is being seen clearly as what they are.
Thank you to Christian Silva, Silva Academy, for joining us and for being so direct with this. Share this one with another soccer parent or with the team chat, because every parent has had this question at some point. Why does my kid look good here, but not there?
This is Chasing the Game, giving confidence to the soccer people of America. Bye, Matt. With confidence.
Goodbye, Liron. With confidence.